engineer. And I had the chance to look at innovation from the inside because I was offered a PhD opportunity while working as an engineer. So I was a participant observer. So I was studying how innovation happened while we were doing it inside a chemical company. And it was wonderful. I loved it. That was a long time ago in the late 1970s. So there wasn't a huge knowledge base of innovation. So I had to kind of take what I could and put it together and then try and put it into practice. But it was great. It gave me a taste for research, but research into practice, very applied, which I've kept. So most of my career, I've worked in the university system, but with a close laboratory in practice, in industry. More recently, I work in the humanitarian sector with people like Save the Children and the United Nations, looking at innovation in a very different context, but where the principles of innovation management that I've been working with for 40 years are still, I think, very relevant. So that's the long and short of my journey. And here I am today, still learning.
I always say that it's always good when you want to ask more. So I'm full of questions. But today we want to focus on your chapter for the Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation. You wrote chapter number 3. The title, I love it, I must say, The Evolving Craft of Innovation. So why did you choose this title?
It's a very good question. Quite explicitly, innovation is something that you learn. And as I say, from my own autobiography, learning how to do it. It's a little bit like those medieval crafts. You didn't start off being able to build a cathedral. You started off as a very junior apprentice, and you were the one who had to go and get the coffee and do all the hard work and so on. And gradually you learned things. And eventually one day you were allowed to take your skills and become what's called a journeyman. And you went then and practiced. You still weren't particularly good, but you were competent. And you learned by going into different situations and doing building work or whatever your craft was, acquiring knowledge, learning through failure as well as success, meeting people, gradually building the knowledge until one day you become a master craftsman. And then you're the kind of person who might build a cathedral. So that was one metaphor that I had in mind, because when I look at organizations and all the work I've done over many years, the smart ones keep learning. They don't say, we know how to manage innovation, we'll tick the box. They keep challenging themselves. And of course, it's a changing world. The environment's constantly shifting. And so we need to learn new tricks, let go of some old ones that used to work. That phrase, dynamic capability, which is so beloved of innovation scholars, but for me, it has a very direct meaning. It's the ability to step back in the context that's changing, review the way we do something, and enhance it. So we're developing our craft. And that's really why I chose the title. It's about an evolving knowledge base, but it's also a very practical knowledge base, hence craft.
Wow, I like a lot this focus because it is also because it's so connected to human qualities as well that you never learn to master. And you made me think about this phrase that we say that when I thought I had all the answers, the questions changed, no? So yeah. We never keep learning. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. But can you let us know or explain in a summary? We have a bit of time to talk about what this is chapter about.
Sure. So when Wim and the others asked if I'd contribute, I was delighted. I think it's a wonderful project. It's great to see it finally come alive, but it's a kind of collection of perspectives. And I was really pleased to join in, and I've learned so much from reading the other chapters. I think what I wanted to do was bring a little bit of history. I do feel, especially as I'm getting older, that we shouldn't forget that innovation didn't begin yesterday. It's actually something we've worried about for a very long time. And it's important to put even something as challenging and significant as open innovation in this historical context. And so that was one of the things I wanted to do. The other is that the thing I enjoy most is enabling people to learn, whether it's in the classroom or in companies doing consulting work or advising in different ways, but essentially helping others to learn this craft of innovation. And so I thought it might be useful to reflect on how the knowledge has been transmitted, what we've been teaching, and where did all that knowledge and those courses come from in the past, and how are they changing in the context of open innovation. So that's really what the chapter's trying to do. It's a look back, a look at now, and a brief look forward in terms of the way in which we mobilize the knowledge and organize it as something that can be taught and trained and learned.
This is interesting. You know, we are now having discussions also about the World Open Innovation Conference this year that will be in Berkeley. And we were saying, okay, nowadays, it's been 20 years of open innovation since Henry wrote the book. And we are now in this nice moment where we can reflect in the specific evolution of the craft of open innovation, also looking into the future without disconnecting from that past, but also building over what became before that. No, so that's the full track of innovation. Is that what you are talking about here? No.
Yeah, and I think one way to look at it is that we have this word paradigm. It's a little difficult, but for me, it's a pair of mental spectacles. It's the way we view the world, the problems and the challenges we see, the solutions that we bring. And paradigms are very helpful and they guide us, but they change. And I was very, very fortunate in my early career to work with a very famous innovation scholar, a man called Roy Rothwell at Sussex University. And Roy wrote a great paper, quite in fact, a sort of prescient paper in 1992. So long before open innovation emerged. But Roy said, look, we need to think of mental models, paradigms, through which we look at innovation, whether we're scholars and researchers or government, policymakers, or practitioners. And he said, look, if we look back, the 60s, the 1960s and so on, it was really simplistic. It was push models, knowledge push, science will do it all. No. Or need pull, necessity is the mother of invention. No, it's not. But they were models, they helped us get started and they focused more attention. By the early 80s, we had this kind of, it's push and pull, we're coupling together, but it's very much the firm, the enterprise at the center. No, there's a wider world. So we began to talk about key customers and key suppliers and look at relationships, but still like a planetary system with the firm at the center. That's where Roy was really speaking from in 1992. And he said, look, looking forward and looking at the way things are changing, it's going to be different. In particular, it will be networked, it will be global, it will be increasingly enabled by digital technologies. Remember, we're talking 1992, so this was just the very beginning. And what he was imagining was today, certainly the 21st century. And he was suggesting we need a new generation of thinking, fifth generation innovation models to deal with it. And that really, for me, is the sort of process that I tried to capture in the chapter. It's where open innovation fits. I think Henry would be the first to admit that he didn't invent collaborative innovation and knowledge sharing. There's plenty of research and literature going back decades before. What he did do was brilliantly give us a label and a touchstone for thinking in this different way. And then we've spent 20 years working out how to do it, because it's one thing to say it's a knowledge-rich world we should share. How? And for me, the parallel, which I've enjoyed a lot, as well as working in open innovation on the research side, is watching businesses like Procter & Gamble. You know, as we know, in 1999, they switched connect and develop instead of their own internally focused research and develop. That was a great boardroom statement. You know, we'll get 50% of our ideas from outside. How? And they didn't know. And I think one of the nice things was the honesty with which that discussion went on. They spent 20 years, along with thousands of other enterprises, learning how to do it. So I think where we are now is we've got a much better perspective. And that then feeds back to what we can teach in the classrooms, which is very different from what I was teaching when I began. About 1982 was my first teaching job. So I think for me, I was trying to capture some of this, but particularly this paradigm change that happens periodically and where we are now.
This is so interesting. You made me think about the discussion that we are having recently in my environment here is about being aware that there's a long-term creation of things. You said 20 years it took, no? Although maybe in Procter and Gamble they thought that they were every year, no, or they were reporting, but in reality, the depth of change takes time, no? So innovation seems to be something that is very immediate with immediate results, no? But in reality, we are also living through this long time scheme. Do you have anything thoughts about it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the trouble with innovation is it's such a popular word. It's bang, bang everywhere. And the connection is it's all going to happen instantly. Oh, we'll just plug in open innovation or frugal innovation or user innovation. It doesn't work like that. And if you like, it goes back theoretically to the notion of routines, that we talk about behavioral routines. They're rehearsed, repeated patterns of behavior. They don't change overnight. So if we're serious about open innovation, it's going to be a learning process, reinforced, doing more of the things that work and less that don't, and gradually finding our way. So I think right now, one of the top words in the open innovation thing is the ecosystem. And that's great. And yes, absolutely right. It's a multiplayer game, and we have to learn to work with other players who may not share our values, our strategies, and so on. So it's not a case of we control them. We've got to kind of work. It's a kind of mutually dependent system, an ecosystem. That's great, but that doesn't happen just by saying, oh, tomorrow we'll have an ecosystem. That really takes some building. A lot of the work I'm doing now in the humanitarian sector is about scaling innovation. There's some wonderfully great things happening to solve some of the terrible problems we face. And at the pilot level, innovations that are launched and in a small area have an impact. It's great. But that won't change the world. What will is if those things can be scaled up so that millions can benefit. It's innovation scaling. And at the heart of that is everything we teach these days about open innovation. It's a multiplayer game. Not all the smart people work for them. They need to get others around them. They need to assemble an ecosystem and get it to perform. And that's a very tricky thing. It's like kind of balance on a tightrope while you're juggling some balls. It's tricky to do, but it's essential. And I think recognizing it does take time and recognizing that it's going to take a variety of skills rather than one magic single tool, but it can be done. So for me, that's where the exciting frontier still is, but it's not an overnight story. Never has been.
And it's also a craft, no?
Exactly. So yeah.
Well, we are now at the end of our allotted time. One final thought, a conclusion, a call to action you want to share with the audience?
Keep exploring. I think one of the joys of being in this profession is I'm still allowed to be in it. I can still be an active researcher, but there's more questions, more interesting questions now than there ever were. I've thoroughly enjoyed my journey. I have learned some things. I think we as a profession, as a group of innovation practitioners have learned, but there's always new things to discover. Maybe just one last little story about craft. When I was way back, I built and then enjoyed playing one of the very early computer games. It was a space game called Elite. And the idea was simply, you flew a spaceship and you landed on a planet and you traded and you took stuff from there and landed on the next planet. So it sounds really simple. It was a wonderful game. Part one, you had to learn to fly the ship. And of course, you kept crashing. So I spent about 3 months crashing the ship before I could even drive. Back to being a craft. Then I learned to fly to another planet with my precious cargo. As soon as I left my planet, the pirates came and attacked me and shot me down. So I had to learn new things. The point about the game is that you go through it, and each time you learn and you add something. And maybe when you develop your skills, that's good. Maybe when you've solved something, you can add something to strengthen your ship. But the beauty of the game was it just kept evolving. You kept exploring further and further frontiers, but all the time this learning the craft, so that you could never feel safe and say, yes, I'm the perfect spaceman. There was always something left to discover. And I think that's the joy of innovation, but the challenge to us as researchers, teachers, and practitioners.
Yes, I will bring in my heart this thing you said, that the smart people realize that they need to keep learning. So this is something that I will now to do somewhere. Oh, this has been really an amazing time. this proves that these amazing bites of innovation can help us grow, even little by little. Thank you very much, John, for making time, for connecting with us. And thank you to everyone who connected. We will see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.